a problem as old as time, one we humans have been facing for years, only for it to be solidified by modernization. See, humans were built to explore, to be curious about everything: art, science, philosophy, stars, the soil beneath their feet. But watch what happens. We stopped building empires in our heads just to be a useful brick in someone else's wall. We convinced ourselves that giving up on our multidimensional interests was a natural part of becoming an adult.
The narrow lane.
The world is an open field with endless possibilities. Your future, a blank canvas, and you get to choose the colors. These are all the sayings that we've heard growing up. But somehow, by the time you're 18, all these colors turn monochrome and the canvas turns into a spreadsheet. This is the narrowing, the reduction of multidimensional individuals into single track identities and labels. Think about the question you've all heard growing up: what do you want to be when you grow up? Notice how the answer we expect is never a state of being. It's always a utility or a function: a surgeon, a lawyer, an engineer. And if you're someone like me and you kept answering, "I don't know," it wasn't because you didn't know what to do with your life. It was because you couldn't find a label for the vastly capable person you are. The moment you give them an answer, the label begins. You are no longer treated as a complex multidimensional individual with 100 different interests. You are flattened into a simple, easy to read category. It's as if we aren't raising humans anymore, we are raising job titles.
Many for one. The specialist trap.
To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That is a specialist trap. We are taught that going deep into a single domain makes you more valuable, and it actually works. For a while, you become valuable, you gain money, you gain expertise, you get the title. But there is a hidden cost to pure specialization, and it is called the curse of knowledge. When you spend your entire life going an inch wide and a mile deep, your expertise actually becomes your blindness, and you start to view the whole world with that single narrow lens. This isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a cognitive bias called the Einsteinian effect. Researchers took a group of expert chess players and a bunch of amateurs and put them in front of a digital chessboard. By tracking their eye movements, they found something crazy. When a familiar scenario popped up, the expert's eye immediately jumped on to the standard textbook solution. But here's the catch: the researchers had hidden a better unconventional move on the board. The amateurs actually spotted it. The experts literally couldn't see it. Their brains were so hardwired to use their specialized knowledge that it physically blinded them to the better alternative. There is a term in psychology for this: cognitive entrenchment. Studies show that the deeper you go into a single domain, the better you become at solving problems. But only if the rules stay exactly the same, which is rarely the case. But the moment the rules change, like a technology shift or an algorithm change, the experts are actually the slowest to adapt. Because when you spend an entire decade learning how to perfect a single game, a single move, a single domain, you are the last one who wants to admit that the rules have changed. This is why the ultimate trap is narrowing down too much too soon. People often say that double down on your strengths, but you will never actually discover a new strength if you don't go deep enough elsewhere.
One for many. The outliers.
Today, if you try to master 5 different skills, society calls you unfocused or that you'll be average at everything. But history tells a completely different story. By now, everyone knows about Da Vinci. We get it, he was a polymath. He painted the Mona Lisa, he sketched flying machines, but surprisingly, this pattern of mastering seemingly unrelated fields is consistent in almost every outlier human history has ever seen. Take Chanakya. Long before Machiavelli wrote the rules of power, Chanakya wrote the script for an entire civilization. Imagine a mind so calculated that he swore to destroy an entire corrupt royal bloodline and actually did it, only to install his own emperor. But he did not orchestrate the rise of an empire just by being a politician. He built it on a simultaneous mastery of several different things like human psychology, economics, military strategy, and philosophy. Or look at Marcus Aurelius. He was the most powerful man on the planet at that time. He held the reins to the Roman Empire, the man to write history's greatest texts on mental resilience. He navigated all this through a mastery of logistics, statecraft, and human psychology. A more recent example would be Nikola Tesla. We call him an electrical engineer, but this man, he held over 300 patents. He wrote poetry, studied physics, mechanics, philosophy, and spoke 8 different languages. The point is that they realized a fundamental truth, that domains are not actually separate. The idea that science, arts, business, they live in different boxes is an illusion that is keeping you restricted. In reality, the walls between all these domains are really thin, and in some cases they don't even exist. So the real leverage doesn't come from being absolutely best at one thing, but it's the engineer who understands art, it's the marketer who understands human psychology. When you stack skills that aren't supposed to go together, you stop competing with everyone else and build a game of your own.
The shape of many. Humans on a graph.
So where does this leave us? If narrowing down makes you blind, but dabbling around makes you average, what's the actual fix? It's probably easier if I just show you. Let's take a graph where the x-axis represents domains and interests, and the y-axis represents proficiency or experience in that domain. I'll take a few domains. The first is the pure specialist. This is what most of us are told to do. You pick your lane, say marketing, engineering, and you start digging. You put the blinders on, and year after year, you just dive deeper into that one single identity. And look, it pays your bills, but you're putting all your eggs in a single basket. Then you got the exact opposite, the generalist. We all know this person. Heck, we've even been this person. The 2-week obsession, you try a little bit of everything, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You pick up a new hobby, buy all the gear, scratch the surface, get bored, and just move on to the next shiny thing. You never stick with anything long enough to get undeniably good at it. You end up wasting a lot of time and you end up learning nothing. But there's a third way to play this, being a polymath. Instead of digging one deep hole or making a shallow puddle, you build multiple distinct pillars. And look, this takes time. You build one solid pillar, then a second one, then a third. You pick a few totally different domains and you take them seriously. You don't just dabble. You put in hours to get good at every single one of them. But beyond just being a cool concept, being a polymath is actually the most efficient way to utilize your time. It all comes down to the law of diminishing returns. Think about the pure specialist. Getting from absolute zero to about 80% proficiency in a skill usually takes a few months of deeply focused work. But squeezing out that last 20%, trying to become the top 1% in the world, that takes years, sometimes decades of your life only to see marginal results. A polymath, on the other hand, plays a much smarter game. They realize that getting a skill to 80% is usually more than enough to make it highly marketable and monetize it. So instead of spending 5 years bleeding over that final 20%, they spend those same 5 years getting to 80% in 3 or 4 different domains. Your specialty isn't any single one of those domains, it's the combination. When you bring that diverse blend of knowledge into your work, you develop a taste and perspective that no one else can replace. And even if one of those skills become absolutely obsolete in the near future, maybe because of AI or a market crash, it barely affects you. When you connect domains like this, your skills stop adding up, they multiply, and suddenly you start seeing solutions that the pure specialist is completely blind to.
The becoming.
I want to be honest with you for a second, because everything I've said so far, the graphs, the polymath, the history, it's all easier said than done. We live in a time where everyone feels like they have ADHD, that restlessness, those hyperbursts of interest, the inability to stay in one lane for too long. I mean, if you were to go onto one of these ADHD test websites and answer all these questions, I'm sure more than 70 to 80% of you would. But what if you channel that restlessness into building something efficient? Think about what would actually happen when you chase those interests seriously. You learn marketing, you understand how people think. You study finance, you understand how value works. None of that was wasted, and it has absolutely worked for me. And I'd rather spend the rest of my life finding out what this multidimensional passion of mine produces, rather than shrinking myself down into a label that was honestly never meant for someone like me or someone like you. So, If you're not visiting, welcome home.